Thank you for joining us for our reflection on a lesson from the Daily Office Lectionary. My name is Father Tom Papazaglakis, and I serve as rector at St. George's Episcopal Church in Clifton Park, New York. Today is Tuesday in the 16th week after Pentecost. Let us pray. O God, you declare your almighty power chiefly in showing mercy and pity. Grant us the fullness of your grace, that we, running to obtain your promises, may become partakers of your heavenly treasure, through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. Our lesson is from the Acts of the Apostles, the 21st chapter, beginning at the first verse. When we had parted from them and set sail, we came by a straight course to Kos, and the next day to Rhodes, and from there to Patara. When we found a ship bound for Phoenicia, we went on board and set sail. We came in sight of Cyprus, and leaving it on our left, we sailed to Syria and landed at Tyre, because the ship was to unload its cargo there. We looked up the disciples and stayed there for 7 days. Through the Spirit, they told Paul not to go on to Jerusalem. When our days there were ended, we left and proceeded on our journey, and all of them, with wives and children, escorted us outside the city. There we knelt down on the beach and prayed, and said farewell to one another. Then we went on board the ship, and they returned home. When we had finished the voyage from Tyre, we arrived at Ptolemy, and we greeted the believers and stayed with them for 1 day. The next day we left and came to Caesarea, and we went into the house of Philip the evangelist, one of the 7, and stayed with him. He had 4 unmarried daughters who had the gift of prophecy. While we were staying there for several days, a prophet named Agabus came down from Judea. He came to us and took Paul's belt, bound his own feet and hands with it, and said, "Thus says the Holy Spirit, this is the way the Jews in Jerusalem will bind the man who owns his belt and will hand him over to the Gentiles." When we heard this, we and the people there urged him not to go up to Jerusalem. And then Paul answered, "What are you doing, weeping and breaking my heart? For I am ready not only to be bound, but even to die in Jerusalem for the name of the Lord Jesus." Since he would not be persuaded, we remained silent except to say, "The Lord's will be done." Here ends the lesson. Paul's third missionary journey continued southward along the western coast of Asia Minor. He traveled by small boat from Kos to Rhodes to Patara. He was apparently traveling on small boats that took a full day to travel between these port cities along the coast of the Aegean Sea. As the boat would dock each evening, Paul would leave the boat and visit the faithful in each port community. In the morning, he would then once again board and continue his travels until he had completed this part of his journey on the southwest sea coast of Asia Minor and arrived in Patara. At that port, he was able to board a larger and faster vessel that was capable of sailing across the Mediterranean Sea to Tyre, on the western coast of modern-day Lebanon. The larger vessel allowed him to make the journey to Phoenicia without further stops. Tyre was an important destination because Paul wanted to support and encourage the faithful who had fled there from the persecution of the early church in Jerusalem. Through the Spirit, the believers at Tyre urged Paul not to continue on and go to Jerusalem. The phrase, "through the Spirit," raises the question of whether or not Paul was rejecting the will of God by not following the counsel of the believers in Tyre and his insistence on traveling to Jerusalem. While that may be a valid question, it appears that Paul was not being stubborn and rejecting the will of God, but rather he was indeed fulfilling the will of God, as evidenced by the comfort given by God through the prophet Agabus in the 23rd chapter, the 11th verse. It is also possible that through the Spirit could be understood to simply be saying that it is through the Spirit that Paul would suffer in Jerusalem. In that light, instead of being a directive, it was a statement of concern for his safety by the people of Tyre. This was Paul's first contact with this church at Tyre. And yet, after only 1 week, there was a strong bond of love as evidenced by their outpouring and their farewell greeting at the beach on their knees. Paul then left Tyre and proceeded 20 miles south to Ptolemy, modern Acre or Akko, for a one-day stop. In Ptolemy, Paul was able to visit another church of people who had escaped from persecution in Jerusalem. His next leg of the journey was to travel another 40 miles to Caesarea, where he was welcomed by Philip the evangelist. In Caesarea, the prophet Agabus dramatically illustrated how Paul would be bound in Jerusalem if he continued in his mission. As the people heard this prophecy, they pleaded with Paul not to continue on. Undeterred, Paul made his way to Jerusalem, always encouraging the faithful along the way. His mission was fulfilled by bringing an offering of much-needed financial support to the persecuted in the great city. By doing this, Paul tangibly demonstrated the unity of Jew and Gentile in Christ that he believed was central to the gospel message. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you for joining us. Join us every weekday for our reflection. If you live in the Clifton Park area, join us for worship at 4:30 on Saturday and 8 and 9:30 on Sunday mornings. If you're unable to join us in person, join us virtually through our YouTube channel. Our webpage provides recordings and details about all of our offerings.